Shirley Stevens. I'm here with my co-host Trip Mitchell, and we have a guest today, Randal Carlisle. We roped him into this, so
I was walking down the street, and this gorgeous lady came out and said, "Come in this room with me." So here I am. I said,
I was in drag when I did that.
It wasn't you. It was her.
No.
So Randall, why are you here?
Because she came out and she was a good-looking lady and said, "Will you come in the room?"
Is that how you got in the TV business in the first place?
That's exactly right. Yeah, no.
So I grew up listening to Randall.
Oh, really?
Randall was a newsman on this amazing radio station, CKLW, which was in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. But it was a station that just boomed, and people in 5 states and
28 states and
20
5 provinces. It was an unbelievable. It was at 800 on the dial, and it was my goal to work at this because I grew up listening to it growing up in Ohio, and I thought if I ever made it there, then I'd be at the pinnacle of my career.
so we, as kids, we listened to CKLW, and it was the first station to play rock music and a lot of contemporary Motown stuff.
Yeah, a lot of black music.
Yeah.
And we were number 1 in Detroit, Toledo, and Cleveland.
Very cool.
It was a fun station.
That's exciting.
Well, yeah, and we've since heard stories, so it was funny, and I didn't place Randall, and then when I moved to Salt Lake in the early 80s, that's when, didn't know him personally, but you and Terry Wood were the fun anchors.
We were the fun anchors at Channel 2 back then.
But what was,
Wow.
and then obviously KSL was the big kind of indigenous LDS-owned station.
Yeah.
But some of the anchors there used to have some fun. I'd run into them occasionally.
Dick Norris, I partied with him many times.
How did he get away with that?
I always wondered that because we used to drink at the old Manhattan Club, which is down on 4th South and Main, right. You go down some stairs, and it was sort of an old-fashioned sort of New York style roadhouse kind of place. It was dark with foaming leather booths, and they did flaming desserts and stuff like that. And we go down there and get drunk, and Dick on Friday or Saturday night, it must have been Saturday because he was doing the 10 o'clock news on Friday, he'd get up and sing country music on stage drunk.
And
This is the head guy, this is the head anchor at KSL, the church-owned station. I don't know how he got away with it.
because I saw him do at the Canyon Inn out on 7200 South.
Yeah.
I saw Dick Norris, and I'm going, that was one of those, and just one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet.
He's a great guy.
And most news anchors are that way.
Yeah, the ones who are not stupidly arrogant.
And you've got some stories.
I have some, but I can't talk about them.
Well, you've got, come on, some out-of-state story. What's the worst person you ever had to work with in news? Don't use names, but...
I had a female co-anchor in Dallas who refused to look at me. Okay, I'm talking right now, and you look over at me, and you're looking, and that's natural human reaction. And so when we were on a 2-shot, she would sit there and stare at the camera when I was talking, and we had talent consultants who would come through, and they would they do just videotapes, say, let's try this, let's try that, and he would say, I don't mind using her name, it was Jane. He'd say, now Jane, let's just try while Randall's reading something that you look at him like a normal human being might do. And she said, I refuse because I don't ever want to break eye contact with my audience.
Wow.
And she was like, and finally he said, well, okay, we're not live on TV, we're just on videotape. Let's try it and see what it looks. No, I refuse. And this guy was being paid big bucks to come down and be a consultant. And he finally walked out and said, I can't work with the lady, but that's who I had to work with every night.
See, and you think you have it bad.
Oh, there is a list before we started the show.
I thought I had it bad.
Shalise, yeah, that's why you should have said it. That would have been a funnier joke. So Shalise gives me a list of things that I cannot do on set. And
what can't you do?
I've been told not to fart anymore.
Well, I don't know if that microphone will pick up a fart.
It
but
does
we
not.
would pick it up.
So I've been told that that's a deal breaker. And,
And she probably doesn't want you getting naked. Or maybe
Oh,
you do.
no.
I don't know.
Well, ever since that transplant operation, it's not gone well. But Shalise, all joking aside, there are anchors and co-anchors who hate each other, and
they have to make it work.
They do
You have to act like you like each other. You know?
And Holly, the woman that I do the morning show with on the CW, she and I have had some horrible. We get along wonderfully now, and I do that show just for fun. It literally, it's a joy to work with her now. But we've had points where we're yelling and screaming at each other, and then you go into set and you do a show, and it's funny. Those shows sometimes are the best.
Yeah.
So it's like a married couple who likes to fight. I don't,
Right.
but when it comes to working, and I've had people in the past who, you know. So Al Bernstein is one of the nicest guys, but I've seen him where we're doing a fight where there's some challenges, and you know.
I had this wacky idea once when I was working in Dayton. It was a lowly number 3 station, and our ratings sucked.
But you knew your viewer.
But anything we tried just didn't seem to work. And there was, and they had seated me and my co-anchor really close together, and there were people who were spreading rumors that we were having an affair. And which didn't sit well with my wife at the time.
What number?
That was number 3.
Okay.
2. No, 2. I think. Anyway, I've had 4.
Okay.
So I came up with this brilliant idea, but they didn't buy into it. I said, well, why don't we just, since we're lowly number 3 and we're trying to get numbers, why don't we just like maybe 1 or 2 nights sit here, lean into me. He's like, and then look lovingly at each other while we're doing the news, and then like 3 days later, sit there like this, you know, and say, Barbara, Randall, you know, and then it'd be like a soap opera doing the news.
Singularly, the worst idea in the history of news.
Well, it might have worked, but they never tried it. You know, they say, hey, they love each other tonight. You know, they're fighting now. You know.
What's the worst idea that, besides that you've ever actually done on camera from a consultant or a news director?
You know, I don't remember that. That was one of my. Well, that might have worked. I mean, I don't know.
Did you ever date or marry anyone that you were on the air with?
I had affairs with a couple.
Oh.
What were the guys' names?
I'm not going to say which city or where because that would identify somebody who might still be married.
But you know, here, all joking.
Boy, this is a tell-all show.
Our best ratings ever. But it's funny when you're in that business, and you see it happen in the movies all the time because you know you're on set, you're away from home. But in the TV business, it's so much fun, but you do have a lot of time to kibitz and be with people. And then you have the pressure of a newscast or, in our case, a live game.
Yeah, and you're doing it together, you know, and it's like you're relying
I've
on
already
each
been
other.
asked about you.
By whom?
I'm not gonna tell. You don't know them.
Oh, but
I get random texts. It's really weird.
But it's weird when you do a game, and I dated our director, who was a lovely, and she has gone on to have an amazing career. Lucinda Owens, her name. She's one of the top female sports directors out there. But you go through that thing to do a broadcast, and it feels so good afterwards. And you go out and hang out. You know, it's just
have drinks and say, "Way to go!" And yeah, one thing leads to another.
But office romances have been going on since the dawn of time.
Sure.
But when it comes to being on camera, you are a delight to work with. But there are people who are total pricks.
Oh, I totally agree.
And it's just. That is so insufferable where people on camera think that they're better than the crew. But you do have a funny story about blowing up, and you didn't tell the story of when you were early in your career and you blew up during a
It was
commercial.
in Colorado Springs. We had a bump shot camera up in the corner of the studio so that when we go to a commercial break, it'd show a wide shot of the set and everything. And it was election night, and we had 3 or 4 live shots set up, and it was a good evening tonight. People are casting their ballot to decide whatever, and let's go live now and I tossed and there was nobody there. and I'd say, well, we're having some technical problems. We do have another person at this place. Let's go there. Nothing. Went through all 4 like that, and I did like an idiot. I mean, I said something stupid like, obviously we're having some technical problems. We're going to take care of these problems, and we'll be right back after this break. And so during the break, the engineer, our the engineers in the studio said we got everything fixed, and so they came back after a commercial break. They said everything's good, and I went through the same routine with 4 times, and
So that's 8 total.
yeah, so it's 8 times of saying we're having technical problems, and I said, obviously the technical problems aren't fixed. We're going to take another commercial break. And I was so angry at the time, and back then we had paper scripts, and I just stood up, and I forgot that we go to a bump shot, and I just threw the script all over the studio, at the cameras and everything else. And here's how I solved the problem. I ran back to the control room during the commercial break, and I grabbed the director by the shirt, and I said, if you don't get this fixed, you're coming out on camera, and you're going to tell the audience why this is screwed up. And he goes, no, I'm not going to do that. I said, yeah, I'm going to physically take you out there. And he said, it'll be fixed. And I went out, and it was fixed. So,
The beatings will continue until the morale improves.
yeah.
But it is funny when those things happen, how you handle it. And when you're working with somebody you don't like, you will let them, you can put the knife in. And so I was working with a total jackass down in Vegas. And we were doing, what happens on a live game, sometimes you pre-tape the open. And we were having technical difficulties. And he is just being a total dickwad. And what he doesn't know is that everyone is hearing it. Not only the people in the truck, but Sinclair.
Oh, no.
On an open thing. And I never let him know that that everyone was hearing it. And he never worked for that company again.
Yeah.
So we'd have a technical issue. And he goes, swearing and those.
Oh,
And it was an open channel, and you learn the lesson that whenever there's a mic, just because you don't think you're on, you can be.
Yes.
yeah.
And you've never sworn on air?
No, because I've always, I learned that back in radio. Well, in radio days, you controlled your own mic by just pressing a button, but no, I just never did.
And it was funny, we were visiting some friends yesterday who were in the production business, and I told the story. We were doing a game at the University of Nevada, and what happens is you have a wireless mic if you're doing on the field reporting, and afterwards you go with the player of the game or the coach. And you always change the batteries. Even if you have brand new batteries to start the game, you change them at halftime. And they didn't. And they cut back to me on the field with the winning player, and the batteries have gone dead, so they're not getting any audio. So my guy down there gives me a note like, break, cut, we don't have any audio, we're going back up to the booth. So once they did that, I said to him, why didn't you change the MFing batteries, you effing idiot, you FF. And the problem was they stayed with me. Now, you couldn't hear anything I was saying, but you could read lips. So we flew back, it was at the University of Nevada, we flew back for the NASCAR banquet. I remember because this was November, and we flew back that night, and everyone I saw said, we heard you swear on TV today. And I had to explain to them, you lip read. But, and there
It's funny when you start swearing, everybody all of a sudden becomes a lip reader.
Yeah. Like you look at coaches on the sideline.
Yeah,
You're always
exactly.
seeing that
That's
word.
really why they're always doing this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I always thought they were trying to stop signals.
I know.
But you know what's funny is golf now, last weekend they had a tremendous problem because they don't have the crowds anymore. So they're hearing golfers do F-bombs on a bad shot.
Right.
And it's going out, and the announcers are getting some funny lines. Or my favorite, last year, the St. Louis Blues, my wife's favorite team, won the Stanley Cup. And one of the services had someone on their home screen had the audio. What do they call the words at the bottom of the screen when you close caption?
Closed captioning.
And the closed caption was a bunch of Canadian voices saying the F word. And that was on the closed caption at the bottom. But swearing is a part of life. And so far in TV you're not allowed to, but maybe you are.
No.
It depends. Well, not on TV, but.
No, but you can say words that, for instance, public broadcasting use the S word and other words.
They do now. Even on network TV, they use, you pissed me off.
Yeah.
You say that all the time, and that would have been a no-no just years ago. Bastard, bitch. I mean, those are all used.
Mm-hmm.
So did you swear much before you got in the business? And do you swear when you're off camera?
Yeah.
Did you ever wonder how you would not do that? Because I was panicked.
It's black and white for me.
So when the camera light goes on, you just don't.
I just don't.
That's awesome.
And live, yeah, because in my case, aside from that one mistake I've made, I've never had it cross over.
Yeah.
But it always worried the heck out of me.
Well, on that note, I know we told you we'd only take you for 15 minutes, but I think we should take a short break and really figure out why we wanted you on the show. That's all right.
Okay.
For a few more minutes.
Did you really want me, or is it just because I was walking by on the street?
This will be our highest rated show ever. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back to Coffee Talk Tuesday. My name again is Shalise. I'm with Trip, and we are also here with Randal Carlisle.
And show us everything on your mug there.
No, let's not do that on this show.
This might cause a little controversy.
No,
yeah,
it will
my
not.
grandma is watching. We've already talked about this.
Who's watching?
My grandma.
Does Grandma like the current president?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Well, then
She's
Love you,
the
Grandma.
Grandma.
But now you do. Well, you've been doing a podcast on recovery. What?
Right.
Tell me about that.
it's called Oddessey House Journals because I work at Oddessey House in media and community relations, and I'm a recovering alcoholic.
Okay.
And I've been there for over 2 years after I retired from TV. And the show is just about recovery. It's not necessarily to push Oddessey House. At the time we thought of doing it, it's the name we came up with.
Right.
So it focuses on the recovery community. We talk to a lot of people who are successfully in recovery. Not a ton of people, but quite a few of the people. And I don't think I've even referred back to you guys. But some of the people have relapsed since they've done the show and have just disappeared. And,
Oh, really?
yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
It's because they did the show, probably.
Probably. I mean, hanging out with Trip. I am not.
Yeah.
That is really discouraging. And you've never mentioned that to us. And so we've done the episodes that we did earlier were 57 and 58.
Right.
And we met some amazing people on the show. And
I'm not saying a lot of them have, but several have. But that's part of recovery. I mean, nobody goes through a treatment program and recovers and is sober for a while and is 100% sober for the rest of their life. That's not the way life works.
And we had one of our guests who's amazing, Mindy Vincent, who also does a show here. And Mindy maintains that people who are alcoholics can be cured. That's a very minor group of people who feel that way. You know, people like myself, or in my case, I realized that while I've been sober for a little while, I don't want to take another drink.
Right.
And it's important to me, and the show Oddessey House Journals is a way for Lee, our producer, and Randall and I to give back to the community.
Yeah, which I love, and this show is about people who are giving back to the community, and we actually had a guest on a few episodes ago, and he's a recovering heroin addict.
Okay.
And his show is really, really good, and it just, you know, I just feel like it's so important for people to hear these stories and that there's hope, and it gives that little bit of hope. So it's really great.
And not to be embarrassed about it. I mean,
right.
You know, it was hard for me being a TV anchor and a well-known face in town to admit publicly that I was a functional alcoholic for decades, because you're afraid that people are going to look badly upon you, or you know, and it's I think it's great for people to come clean and say, okay, I made a hell of a lot of mistakes in life. I went through 4 wives. And it was primarily my fault. Now that I can say that now that I'm sober, when I was drunk, it was their fault.
Right.
And I just think, because it encourages people to, oh yeah, I'm going through the same thing, and I've been afraid to admit it. I've been afraid to seek help, and help, however you can find it, really makes a difference.
Absolutely.
You know, I had to go through detox and a treatment program twice, and I still go to AA meetings. And I relapsed once after one of my treatment episodes, and I've been clean for 8 years. But that doesn't mean that I could relapse tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, and all of us could do that, unless, as Mindy Vincent said, you're totally recovered and cured, which I don't believe I am. I'd like to be, but I'm not.
That's a goal that many have. But
How long have you been sober?
so coming up on 4 years.
Yeah.
But I've had 4-year shots before, so I'm very, very appreciative of the ability to keep being sober, and many days it's the easiest thing in the world, and some days it's not. And recovery, but one of the things that we talk a lot about is the Oddessey House show is probably the #1 podcast in the state of Utah in terms of listeners, with the exception of when KSL does one of their Susan Powell things, 38 million listeners.
Yeah,
So people in recovery, Shalise, are much more prevalent, and if you don't know one directly, certainly someone that you care and love knows someone who's into it. And it's surprising because the LDS community, you think that the majority of us, 3/4 of the state or 70% of the state is LDS, that people don't drink or do drugs here, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Oh no, I know that from
You grew up
first-hand
here.
experience. Well, no, I didn't grow up here, but I mean, I've had my. I mean, I still drink, but I also used to be on the other side, and I used to do all kinds of other things too. So but it's been years and years since.
Tell
I've
me
done it.
more, dear.
Well, it's all in my book.
Oh, yeah, and by
No,
Shalise
no,
just released a book.
Yeah. The book that I talked about on our last podcast is out now, and I've published it.
Does it have
so
a lot of little juicy stuff in it?
it does.
Well, the pictures
Because
are
it's-
pretty good.
Well, thank you.
I mean, most people don't use Polaroids in a book, but
Oh, stop!
What's the name of this book?
No, but so I lost my son 16 years ago, and when I was recovering from that, I did a lot of drugs. Blow was my drug of choice, and of course I mixed it with alcohol because you can drink a lot of alcohol on blow, and so that was what I did. But then all of a sudden I was just like, I mean, I went back and forth. I'm like, I can't do this anymore, and then I'd be gone, off of it for a while, and then I'd be back. Like, it took a good probably 5 or 6 years to really be, and now it's been, oh gosh, I don't even know the last time I did any drugs, but alcohol, it's now I mean, I still drink, but
well, and we have made a definite.
I don't drink as an alcoholic though.
Okay, well, we've made a point.
You give me one and I want 20.
So, for instance, what we do is we never do this show before 9 a.m. because Shalise has got to wait till 9 a.m. to have a drink.
Wow.
And, we...
Oh, but you don't have a problem.
I don't have a problem.
No, it's
And neither does he with lying.
So, Shalise, just for the record, Shalise does not drink on the show. She does before we started.
Oh, jeez. Oh.
The good news is if you want to clean your nails, just stick it in there. And if you have any bumps on the front of your car, just take some of Shalise's water and go cure that.
Oh, jeez.
If you can't be character assassinated on your own show.
Oh, I know. I'm game.
No, but what's really cool, and I brag about Randall a lot, in that to be a newsman is a fun job. But working for Oddessey House is, you're making a difference.
And that's awesome.
Oddessey House is, and I'm making a difference. I don't like to take credit for anything, but except that I contribute to the success of Oddessey House, and Oddessey House is very successful in terms of taking care of people. So, and I try to enhance their image, get news stories out about them, get some of the clients introduced on things like podcasts and things like that. And so, hopefully I'm making a little difference. Okay.
Well, you are, and
not a lot.
we appreciate everything. And working with you has been a joy because
Thank you.
we have gotten a chance to meet some amazing people. And this was a little kick in the nuts today. To, quite honestly, to hear that some of our guests, and if I thought about it, it made sense.
What did you think? Everybody on here was going to be sober for the rest of their lives?
I did. Which is totally
Tripp,
nice.
this is the real world here.
Yeah, and
That's
maybe
the way recovery works. I mean, it's,
I wonder if the people do you think it's possible to, once you go into recovery and you come out, that you're always going to be that same level of alcoholic that you were to start with? I wonder that because I've heard so many times, and I've had several friends who've been, gone through the program, and they don't drink like they used to. I mean, I know that's a touchy subject, and it's...
I believe you're always... I mean, and the AA Big Book talks about that and says we try to drink like gentlemen, which would be, you know, as opposed to being a drunk every time I drink, have 1 or 2 drinks, and I could never do that. And I couldn't do that now. I don't think, but I'm not going to try because...
And I, in my own case, I proved it. You know, where you can go, and I've had years sober, and, you know, it starts with a drink that's, after a hockey game, that beer, you know, is the best tasting beer, and I'll have one and go home and be fine. But once it starts, it's a trickle.
Yeah.
And
I don't know. I just don't.
Yeah,
relapse is part of, whether it be drugs or alcohol. It's just part of recovery. But I think people who stay clean for the rest of their lives don't dabble in it,
right?
Because it's just. I mean, my last relapse 8 years ago, I remember for some reason I said, you know, I'm going to have a beer, and I remember drinking the beer, and then I remember my brain saying, no, it's okay, you only had 1 beer, why don't you have another? Right. And then after 2, I remember my brain saying, you're okay, just keep drinking. And that's the way an alcoholic brain works. Right. And I don't ever want to get to that point. If I don't have that first drink, my brain doesn't work that way. But as soon as I do, it does. Yeah. You know.
And when it comes to people in the state of Utah, there's so many amazing resources. And, you know, Oddessey House, 800 to 1,000 people sometimes being treated. And that these are people whose lives have inexorable value. Yeah. And sometimes we look at it that maybe we think that alcohol or drug addiction is the people down in the old treatment center downtown. You know, you want
the old road home shelter.
Yeah, and it's not the case at all. There are people of amazing worth.
I'll tell you, we've had a bunch of people who came from Operation Rio Grande when they cracked down there, and they have been some of the most successful people in our program. And they've talked about the fact that they never had a chance before because now there's new financing with Medicaid and things like that can pay for a treatment program where they couldn't get into a program before, and they wanted to. And they come into our program, they succeed wildly, and they're out in life doing great things, and they just didn't have an opportunity before. So you can't categorize people.
Exactly. Well, and it doesn't make them bad people. Like, I mean, we all have our own problems. We all have our own addictions. We all have this. It doesn't, just because you're labeled as an alcoholic doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just
Although I am,
that you,
but that's okay.
But that's you.
Yeah, it's just me. Yes.
Well, I know 4 attorneys who might think you're not the nicest guy.
You know, but they made a lot of money off my divorces, so they might like me a lot.
Are all your ex-wives very excited when you get a new TV gig in a bigger city? And
most of them don't contact me. Although I remember, you know, one of the things in AA is to make amends to the people you've hurt. And I remember when I was gung-ho, when I'm first getting sober, I said, okay, I'm going to make amends to, and I couldn't remember a lot of the people I hurt because I was drunk, blackout drunk. But I did remember my 4 wives, and I
well, that's good.
Yeah,
that'd be a great autobiography. I did remember my 4 wives.
And so I tracked down their email addresses and sent them all long apology explanations, thinking, okay, I'm doing the right thing for AA and stuff. And I never heard from one. 2 of them said, way to go, I'm proud of you, thank you for the apology, you're forgiven, blah, blah, blah. And the other one said, F you. So I just sent it back. So, you know.
Hey, you bet 500.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah.
You'd be a $35 million a year player if you bet 500. And
you know, it's important when you I wish I could remember all the people I hurt along the way. But
I feel like that's something that I do just because of my own trauma and my own experiences. Like because I do like that part in AA, but I kind of just do that naturally. Like, I hate hurting people when I know I've hurt someone. It's just like, own up to it. And I was actually teaching that lesson to my son today because he's got little sticky fingers. He's 8, and he loves to steal food now. Like, I live with my uncle, and he'll go up to his kitchen and steal food. I'm like, what is the deal?
Are you depriving him?
Right? You'd think so. No, he has more treats than I do. And so he's like, okay, if I can just... But I'm trying to teach him, like, when you do that, you got to own up to it and just say sorry and
your son to Tiffany's, do you tell him that the little things in the glass cases
Do I
is sugar?
look like I can afford Tiffany's?
That's why you take your son to.
Oh, right.
He's using his 5-finger discount.
Well, this has been a delightful show.
I know, and we made it the whole half hour. Look at how we tricked you.
Thank you for inviting me in. I'm a sucker when a good-looking woman says, "Come on in here."
Oh, well, thanks.
So-
Obviously, 4 times. It's okay. Actually, I've been married twice, so I mean, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm halfway there.
And I've got one
Yeah.
and counting.
We'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Well, we will. Hey, thank you so much for letting me be your guest host. This is always a lot of fun, and today I think easily Randall's the best guest we've had today.
Today, yes. I'm glad I could entertain you.
I'm really glad that you agreed to be on our show, and